Hey guys, so I just figured I'd jump on and we do like a little get ready with me because we have kind of a busy morning around here, and it's the first day out of Mercury Retrograde, which I don't know about you, but like the first day out of Mercury Retrograde, feels like I feel like everybody's just been really relieved that it's ending. And you know, we always feel like that with Mercury retrogrades. We always feel like, oh, thank God, like it's over. Like life was absolutely crazy and whatever. This one felt really, really potent for the mamas. Like really, obviously it's going to feel potent for everybody in their own way. Obviously I have women around me who are not mothers. But I have had so many moms, come to me during this retrograde with a lot of the feelings that I was moving through. Obviously, so what happens with Mercury in retrograde is Mercury in the sky appears to be moving backward. It actually is not. It's just the way that it's orbiting. But it does crazy shit. Mercury is the planet of communication. It's the planet of communication. It's the planet of how we receive communication, how we communicate. Obviously, because like if your Mercury is in like a water sign, a lot of the things, mine is in a water sign, a lot of the things that you say are going to start with like, I feel, right? So Cancer is about feeling. My sign is Cancer. My Mercury sign is Cancer. My sun sign is also Cancer. It's going to be a lot about how I feel. So depending on your Mercury, that is the way that you communicate. And then what happens is that's stationary, right? So it's your chart. In your chart, your Mercury stays stationary. It's a snapshot of the sky the minute that you were born. However, all the planets do transit our chart. So the planets in the sky move around, transit our natal chart. So during Mercury retrograde, it is incredibly helpful to see where Mercury is falling in your chart, because it's going to dictate what kind of themes you are moving through in during this Mercury retrograde. So like mine was in the house of mine was in the 8th house, which is like the house of death, transformation, personal transformation, like all the things like humans don't want to see, don't want to look at. Obviously there are people whose like Sun and Venus and things and like the social stuff is in that 8th house, which would make it make you somebody who probably likes like murder mystery shows and all these different things, whatever. However, my Mercury retrograde fell in that house. So I had a lot of like existential childhood fears come up, which I knew was going to happen because I had some crazy Iranian shit happen a few months back that kind of highlighted those childhood fears. So I knew that was going to come up. So this Mercury retrograde came up. It was that final push, that final purge to get rid of those things for me, because I know I can't move forward with those things holding me back. I knew that was going to happen as my business is shifting and changing, expanding. A lot of things that are coming up are going to be very, very expansive in Just Polarity universe. So I'm very, very excited about that, and I knew these changes had to happen. I knew these fears had to go. It doesn't mean that I actively lived in these fears. So this is something that's important to recognize about yourself, because it gets rid of a lot of like imposter syndrome and shame. And when things come up to clear, it doesn't mean that that's your whole being. It doesn't mean that like that is who you are. Your fears, especially the ones that are kind of still subconscious, those fears are not who you are, and you don't have to be ashamed of them. So some are conscious, some are subconscious. The conscious ones you still don't even have to be afraid of, right? So I knew these things were going to come up during the retrograde because I checked in my chart, which is why I always preach so much about how important it is to know what your chart looks like. It's also why I have like I think I have a couple different types of chart readings available for you guys, because it is so much fucking easier to move through life when you know what like your blueprint is. Obviously, like there are some things that I recognize, like astrology only goes so far, and that's a very unpopular opinion in the astrological world. However, I'm an intuitive, and I'm a shaman, and I'm a healer. And so, you know, my own views are a little bit different than like your typical astrologer. But for the most part, I genuinely feel that your chart is your blueprint. And so it's nice to be, even for your kids, like, for the moms, you know what I mean, and the dads, like, it's so nice, like when they're starting school age, to be able to look at their chart, look at their communication style, and say like, oh, like my communication style is, you know, my Mercury is in water and my kid's Mercury is in fire. And so that's why it's a bit explosive and, you know, XYZ, whatever. So this Mercury retrograde, I do feel like it was a big thing for the moms. Like, obviously, like I said, a lot of people, everybody's going to feel what they're going to feel. I happen to have a lot of mothers around me. And even the ones that are not moms tend to have a lot of mom energy rolling through them. So this retrograde felt very much like we're releasing, as the mom, talking about moms here, we're releasing a lot of these old fears that we had. It almost reminded me a little bit of postpartum. I don't know if you're a mom watching this right now and you agree with me. It felt a lot like those postpartum thoughts that you have, like when you first take the baby home and, you know, you and your husband are like trying to put on their clothes and you're like, like what if their pinky gets snagged in the shirt and I rip her pinky off? And like the intrusive thoughts that come with motherhood for the first time, second time, third time. Like postpartum is not just for the first time mamas, but it felt like a lot of that stuff and a lot of like, oh my God, like my babies are growing up and like what does that look like? And again, depending on where it fell in your chart, it's going to affect you. And this is just me speaking on a collective level, because obviously where it falls in your chart is going to affect the way that you see it. But no matter what, no matter what placement this retrograde fell in, every mother I knew was feeling this energy, because I've talked to them. And they actually, moms came to me and there was a lot of like, is this my last child, like my last baby, you know, energy, that kind of thing. And it was all the moms, not just me, and everybody. I have, because I am me, I have everybody's chart basically in my phone. And so of course I peeked at everybody's chart, and you know, Mercury falls in a different house for everybody. And the common consensus was still the same. But this kind of breaks away from being just about being a mom, right? Because what comes with us realizing that our babies are going to grow up? What comes with that? That comes with new sense of self. Because when we birth a baby, we birth ourselves, right? When we birth a child, we birth ourselves anew. And death, our womb is a portal, right? For birth and death. It's a portal to the other side. Like our womb is fucking magical. And so it doesn't just transform. We literally have birth and death inside of our body. We have life cycles inside of our body. So when we birth a child, we birth ourselves. We become a whole new person. And then you have to get to know that whole new person, right? So then all of a sudden this kid has grown up and we're like, I birthed this entire new person, right? I birthed this whole new person, and the different various stages of them getting older, growing up, turning into their own human, we're going to have to shift and change, right? So we have to get comfortable with change. We become a whole new person as they become new people. The only constant is change. And like, I'm a Cancer, so like it's not my favorite thing, but it's something I've had to get comfortable with. It's something I've had to integrate, because there's nothing else to do. I couldn't think of the word. There's nothing else to do but get used to the change that kind of is inevitable. And so we have to rebirth ourselves over and over and over and over. And with this retrograde, if all the mamas are sitting here being like, oh my God, you know, shit, my kid's going to school for the first time maybe, or, you know, oh my God, we changed to like a big boy bed, or, which actually happened to a bunch of moms I know during this retrograde. Not just one, not two, like it's crazy, the common themes that come up, but you know, all these things happen and we have to sit down and kind of look at ourselves. And then there's fear that comes with that, because we spent all this time getting to know who we are as a mom, and then all of a sudden, okay, time for change again. So this retrograde had a lot of that type of energy. And so now that the retrograde itself is over, it ended yesterday, and we now have the shadow period, which, you know, some people do feel the shadow period a little bit more. It depends on the retrograde for you and the way that it's falling and the way the aspects, that the shapes that it's like making within your chart. because some people do feel the shadow period a little bit stronger than they felt the actual retrograde. I don't notice that as often, but it does happen. The common consensus for me usually is like the shadow period's not nearly as hard, shall we say, as the actual retrograde itself. Technology starts to kind of go back to normal and all that stuff. So, you know, you've done it. You made your way through it. The key right now is to make sure that you learn the lesson. Make sure that you are reflecting on what happened, what came up in your mind, the actual things that came up in your world, and try to piece them together rather than sitting there saying it was a mishmash of like bullshit, because it wasn't. As much as it feels that way, it wasn't. Whatever feelings came up, I guarantee they're kind of like releasing and letting loose right now. So sit down, look at the things, right? Unless if there's already, like the other day it dropped in for me. It was all apparent. Usually like 2 to 3 days before the retrograde. It's happened a week before the retrograde ended. I'm usually in my kitchen, happens every time, and I'm like, that was the lesson. Oh my God. Or like I start channeling and I'm like, oh, my lesson was in there. That was interesting. So it has happened. Most of the time it happens that way for me. Not every time though. So sometimes you do need to sit down and reflect on what you walked through during the retrograde, what came up for you. So take this time during the shadow period and like root out the shadow. If there's any shadow left, like sit down and figure it the fuck out, because it's worth it. There's no reason not to utilize this as a tool. And if you're sitting there and you're like, I don't know what the fuck is going on. I don't know what my chart looks like. This feels really uncomfortable, but I still don't know how to fix it. I do have astrological chart readings, and I also have intuitive channeled Reiki sessions available in person and virtually. So if any of those are something that you need right now, or something you're feeling that you need assistance with, just drop me a little comment and ask for a link, and I will send you a link so that we can kind of just dive into whatever it is that you went through during this retrograde, and I can check your chart or whatever, depending on the session that you want. So that's an option for you as well. That is also very, very available and very necessary for some. So like I said, drop a comment, or in my link tree, you can also just book a session. I'm going to jump off now because I got to go do a whole bunch of mom stuff, but I will chat with you guys real soon. Happy end of retrograde.